back to Man The Helm podcast. Today I am joined by Sarah Rudy from Hello June. How are you?
Hi, I'm well today. How are you?
I'm I'm doing good.
Good.
Um, I started this podcast to kind of like get back into the music world, the gear world of everything. I was kind of out of it for a little while. And one of the things I always love, it's always great when you find a new artist or a new band and you kind of get to like deep dive into a catalog and rediscover and kind of get reinvigorated of everything. But before we start talking about Hello June, what about you? Where did you grow up? When did you start playing music? Let's kind of get a little bit of that backstory and we can just go from there.
Sure. I grew up in Bridgeport, West Virginia, which is like a sort of little suburban town in West Virginia. Um, I started playing guitar because my grandfather, like, I think he worked on airplanes, which is
Very
kind of a
cool.
cool
Yeah.
job, but he also like just when he wasn't working, he was always just wanting to play. So I feel like I was really the only family member to really take to that. We had a few uh, guys in my family that would sit around with him, but once we started sitting around, I feel like that was it just felt like magic to me. So it wasn't anything. I think his skills weren't. Um, he wasn't like amazing or anything, but he loved just playing chords and singing. So we sat around and played hymns and like old Johnny Cash songs. And so that was kind of my first real exposure to playing. Um,
Very cool.
yeah.
Well, I can definitely relate to that. I had an uncle that was the player in the family, but I didn't really know him very well. Unfortunately, I didn't get to hang out with him a whole lot. But yeah, it feels like I was kind of in the same boat. I was like the only person that kind of gravitated towards the musical artistic side, you
Yeah,
know?
which I
So,
don't get. I was always confused why like nobody really cared.
yeah,
Like my
right.
cousins were totally ambivalent. They didn't care. I was like, yeah, that's all I want to do.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the second, I think, I don't, oh, when was it? Probably, I think I started playing violin really early on, and that was like my hook
Oh
right there.
wow.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It
that's
was like,
awesome.
oh, this is so cool. Something I can just create out of
Yeah,
thin air so much.
right.
You know what I mean? That
Yeah,
it doesn't, it comes from the ether or however you want to look at it. You know what I mean?
right.
And then I can actually make it something physical and tangible, you
Right.
know?
Exactly.
So, but yeah, I can totally relate to that. As far as so I teach guitar at a local shop, and that's one of the problems I do. It's not a problem. It's a mindset that I'm trying to get out of the students that I have about the quote unquote good enough thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything music or any artistic endeavor, it's meant to have that, you know, you being honest and authentic. That's what people like.
Yeah. Right.
The good enough thing doesn't like what we can't put that on a scale. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
If you're enjoying the music, you're enjoying the craft that you're honing.
Yeah.
That's the point, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So
I think I've struggled with that some, just because like I there's like a part of me that's very perfectionistic, and I think there's another part of me that isn't. But part of me is, and like part of me is like for years I would never like claim to be a guitar player,
sure,
for that reason. And um, I think I claim to be a guitar player now, like because I think it's just if I'm playing guitar, that's what I'm doing, like a lot of the
right,
time. So
yeah,
it's kind of weird and contradictory not to claim that or something, but um, yeah, I know what you mean. Like kind of being able to throw that out, because we are what we do, I think, so um to throw out the comparisons and just to keep what you're doing is means you're adding to the musical community in such a in a unique way, which is what we should be doing anyways.
100%. And the people that I've seen that are successful are the people that are unabashedly their self.
Yeah.
You know, it's always, and that old adage, I've said it before on the show, that comparison is the thief of joy. We don't need to sit here. We can take inspiration from other artists or other forms of whatever we're trying to achieve, whether that's in music or in art or whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't need to sit here and be like, man, I wish I was good as insert so and so.
Right.
You know, it's always been a weird mindset, and I think it does happen to everybody because everybody I have talked to has struggled with
Right.
that in some way. I know I definitely have too, but I think that's where you almost have this like freeing moment
Yeah.
when you just are like, you know, I'm just gonna do my thing,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So when did that kind of start? You were playing the hymns, you were kind of getting some hours on the guitar and whatnot, and then when you started to shift and you know, like when did the songwriting aspect kind of creep in?
I think um, I started my mother when I was in high school. I like I was struggling with like an eating disorder
Okay.
and just like mentally really low, really bad. And my mother was like, "You are gonna join the church music stuff." So I
Mm-hmm.
was sort of thrown into um, playing for the kids' church guitar.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was, it was like a fairly big church. So, it was like an evangelical thing. You know, I'm, I don't follow that to this day, but I really loved the kids. I loved doing it. It was a lot of fun. But then I got thrown into the teen stuff, and there
Yeah.
was some. It was a little more serious. There was like some competitions and stuff like that,
Very
and
cool.
I got a lot of experience just like playing with people that way. And the big thing that like sort of sticks with me today is there was a competition, and the girls in the group got sick that were singing, and I had not sung a note out loud to anyone except myself. Like even my grandfather, he was like always like, "Oh, you need to sing with me." He was very like he was kind of aggressive about that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, "No, I will not sing." I was embarrassed to sing. I don't know, just so shy. And that group, it was all gonna fall apart. And we had a trip to Colorado, all paid for, all everything. We were playing in the Pepsi Coliseum thing. Like it was a big deal, this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was I was pushed to sing into a microphone at that point, because it was either that or we had to just nix the whole thing. And so
Right.
it took me like a whole practice to like get up being able to sing into a microphone. Um, but at that point, I feel like that was when I was like, oh, okay, like I can hear my voice out loud. Just funny to say now, but I started to then um, like write my own songs. So
Very cool.
that I tell people that story sometimes because like I'll talk to people that are like me, like they just don't come out of the womb with like a whole bunch of confidence, and I'm like, you know, I the fact that I could sing into that microphone was a huge deal to me, so whatever I've done to this date, like, it's like I wouldn't have thought that I could do that.
No. Well, and that's one of those kind of. I think there's points in everybody's life where whenever you're doing something you're passionate about, or and maybe you don't know exactly what's happening, but you have to take those leaps
Yeah.
in order to get to that next step. And that sounds like that was one of those big leaps,
It
very very big leaps
it was a
for
very big
you.
leap.
Yeah, yeah. I can't imagine. I couldn't even imagine trying to. I've tried the singing thing, and I'm sure if I practiced at it, I would be somewhat okay. But there's something about it where I feel like I have a comfort blanket with the guitar. I
Yeah.
have no problem being up on stage with the guitar, but
Yeah.
something about having a microphone and people hearing me project it still freaks me out to
Yeah.
this day. You know, So anybody listening, I'm 34 years old. It still freaks me out to have a microphone in my face, unless there's somebody else that's singing with me. Then I'm okay. But me by myself, I still can't even imagine that.
I very much
But
relate. Yeah.
do you find that though that I've talked to other singer songwriters where they've kind of said some things like that too, where would you feel as confident even today without the guitar, or would you still be just fine to go up there and
So I've through time kind of gotten better at feeling comfortable. The thing that's really pushed me into feeling more comfort without a guitar, because I'm with you, like I want my guitar in my hand. Um,
sure,
but I'll do these things where there'll be like tributes, and there's a band that they already have, and it's complete. Like they don't need me to play guitar, and it
sure,
would be
sure.
kind of stupid for me to just get up and play rhythm. And so I've I've done it sometimes now where I get up and I'm guitarless. And at first I was like, oh my God, where do you put your hands? Like,
Right. Yeah, I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
right.
Yeah.
Pocket. I'll find myself putting my hands in my pockets, and I allow myself to do that. It's a thing though.
Well, at least you're not one of those like brooding musicians in the back with their hands,
Right.
folded up, whatever that is. You can always tell the musicians who in the crowd.
Right. Right.
Anyway, but no, that's cool. That's definitely like that's a story, and this is kind of one of the reasons I like having these conversations with people. With the show is about taking control of your life and driving the direction you want it to go, and it is music based because I'm a musician. Everybody I interview is a musician in some sort of capacity, whether they're an artist or a builder of gear or whatever. But what people end up seeing is like the outside perspective. Like they'll find Hello June and be like, they've always been awesome. This band has always been doing this thing.
Right.
It's like, no, man, it took time to build up to this point, and it took struggle and leaps of confidence to
Right.
build up to where what you're seeing now. That's why I love stories like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when we took off, and you decided we're going to sing now. When did you start playing with bands and having that music that you were writing, start to come out? Because like I know from personal experience, it's always kind of a weird thing when you're like, "Hey guys, I wrote this song.
Right.
What do you think about this?"
Right. I think I didn't start writing my own songs until like probably my third year in college.
Okay.
I was like heavily involved with helping someone else write songs, um, and that was really fun. And I was singing a little bit of harmony too, so I was getting like a little bit of experience there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was heavily behind the scenes helping write those songs. So that was some experience for me. But I think at a certain point I was like, well, I'm kind of steering this ship. Why don't I just do it? Why don't I steer my own ship?
Right.
Um, so I about my junior year in college, I was like brave enough to jump in a garage band and write a thing and show it to like five or so people. It's actually the song "Time" that's on our EP
Oh,
that's out there.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the first one. It's in the key of
Yeah.
A. I could sing in the key of A. I felt confident of that.
Well, speaking of keys, when it comes to improvisation, I'm awesome in B.
See,
I know everywhere to go when I'm in B.
see,
You know what I mean? So I totally relate
yeah,
to to the singing in A.
right.
So no, but I'm going to apologize in advance. Like I said, I was perusing through Philip's old podcasts, and you came up about a month and a half ago. And one thing I will say is sometimes whenever you find a new artist, I always try to go through their entire catalog. I try to really listen to everything. So I do apologize. I probably won't remember names of songs because it is still
Oh yeah.
fresh. But what I will say is, I drove down to Nashville to meet up with some guys the other day to pick up a few guitars, and I listened to just whatever was on shuffle on Spotify on the way back. I have never felt like so like happy driving through like the backroads
Yeah,
countries, you know? And it was like, then this is like the perfect soundtrack. That's kind of just what I kept
that's
feeling,
cool.
you
Yeah,
know? Now not every song was kind of that feeling, but overall of a general sense, that's like, man, this is perfect traveling
maybe
music. And then I got home and
the songs were in their
I'm
natural
sorry.
habitat.
It maybe, you know, that but no, I really enjoy, your songwriting. I really enjoy your guitar playing. It's so much different than what I've been consuming as far as music,
Thank you. Yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
And it's really cool. So whenever you're coming up with, you know, a riff or a song idea, how I've always been curious about this because I've done the co-writing thing too with a bunch of people, and usually like the melody is what gets me.
Yeah.
I come up with a solid melody and then, like I kind of build off of that. Is that kind of similar to how you're writing, or
Yeah.
how do you kind of go about
A
that?
lot of times I will have like a little something on guitar that just feels really natural to kind of
Sure.
sit in. And then I'll come up with a melody. I think if I don't come up with a melody, then the thing on guitar just becomes almost obsolete or something, like
Yeah.
not that I'll never
Yeah.
touch it again. It's just that, that's that step that's like really important is what you're saying, like coming up with the melody. Um, and I think in the past, I've I wasn't as like this past album. I learned a lot. Um, I was working with Roger Allen Nichols, he's worked with like Paramore, he's worked with Lurkin Poe, and he just,
Very
yeah,
cool.
he's got a lot of knowledge, and that was really cool for me, to just hear what someone else, is thinking in terms of the process. And I think I'm excited for my next record because I think I learned a lot like in the moment. But when you're learning in the moment, you like maybe don't do your best work at that moment.
Sure. I get
So
it.
I
I
do
totally
I
get
think
it.
that there's like I did learn a lot. I took it in, and that key step of the writing the melody, really, I think that I took a good bit from him, um, with Artifacts, the last one. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm definitely with you. Like that step is the biggest thing. Like that, if the melody's not there for me, it's I have to kind of move on and find it elsewhere.
Well, and I always try to think about it from the audience perspective. If it's something that, because you want to write something, or you want to have something that gets stuck in your head. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You want to have a melody or a hook or a line of words that really connect with people. And I don't want to say this to sound like you should just be generically engineering your songs to make it so people will remember them. No, like still come from a place of meaning, from being honest, authentic to yourself, but having that idea in mind too of like, man, I really want this to connect with the
yeah,
audience. The best way to do that is a solid melody, a solid
right,
hook, maybe have some, a really awesome, maybe like small little bridge of a guitar part into something, or whatever you can kind of come up with, but something that'll connect them and kind of hook them into that
right.
song. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to do in the
Yeah.
moment, like you were
Hmm.
saying. It's really hard to be like, I'm going to write a good song right now.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
I've been there too, where I'm like,
So,
I'm gonna write a good song. Usually it doesn't work that way. Like,
no, it never
yeah,
does. It's one of those weird things, and that's what I love about music so much is when that inspiration hits. I'm sure you've had it happen too multiple times where it just all
yeah,
flows out at once. You know what I mean? You're not having to
right,
fight anything.
yeah,
It's just like the universe or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, it just pushes it all to you. And it's like, hey, here you
right,
go.
for sure.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I do.
So it's a wild thing when things like that happen, because that's one of the things I love about the artistic side of everything that people do, is because it doesn't come from
Yeah,
anywhere else. Like you can't it's coming from somewhere inside the
right.
individual, you know.
It's
And I think that's why we connect so much
right.
with it.
It's like that subconscious thing that's going on that like we can't really put into like logical thought or words sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I'll be laying
Yeah.
in bed at night. I've come up with a habit lately that I've liked. Because I've noted that at night when I'm almost asleep, like just all like I mean I'm almost asleep, right? I'll have like the best thoughts. Like I'm like, man,
Yeah.
what? Why can't you have these thoughts like midday where you can write them down? So I've been getting my phone out and writing the things down. And I've come up with some really solid things. And songs are a little different because I'll have a melody and it's just gone because I'm not I you know, it's like 1 a.m. I'm not gonna
Yep.
I mean, maybe sometimes I'll get whatever and do it, but um, I do think it's that thing where it's like it's a subconscious thing. It's my brain is relaxed enough to like for once in the day, to kind of allow itself to go wherever it goes artistically. It's an interesting thing. It's probably where we do our best artistic work, is my guess. Like when you allow that subconscious thing to relax and just like you know be there in the moment. Um, I try to emulate that when I'm like I try to get myself to that point of like I took a songwriting course with Adrienne Lenker and which was really
Okay.
cool. I
Yeah.
don't know if you're familiar with her, but I really love her songwriting. And so whenever School of Song announced that they were having her on, I was like, oh yeah, sign me up immediately. Um, but I one of the first things that she talked about was like almost like allowing your mind to rest, um, and sort of finding that spot where you're not just thinking about everything and being analytical or overly analytical. And
Yeah.
I think I already tried to do that, but I try to make it even more of a point to like get to that point before I start writing.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's. I hate to sound like a broken record, what people really love in this sort of creative environment is being honest and
Yeah,
authentic. They want you to be yourself. And I know how hard of a thing that can be, especially for somebody, in their late teens, early 20s. I understand that, like, you might not know who you are
yeah,
yet, or what that means, but that is what people are all
yeah,
about. And when the songwriting and stuff comes out, you want to try your best to draw from experiences you've had, really really kind of hone in on those experiences and try to relay that emotion, whether it good, bad, indifferent, whatever
yeah,
it is, into that
right.
music. You know what I mean? So one of my favorite tunes that I keep going back to is
Mm,
Interstate from you
thank
guys.
you.
I really really love that song, especially the guitar work in it. I really enjoy, and we need to talk about this for a little bit, because like I said, I've never you're so like outside of the main wheelhouse that I normally consume. But your guitar is so huge, but so like relaxed at the same time. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like every time I listen to it, I'm like, man, this is it's like kind of like pulling at both sides of my brain right now. Like this is
Thank
awesome.
you.
I can't like wrap my head around it. So like, where did you kind of start to develop that? Because one of my favorite things to talk to students about, especially, is like kind of honing your
Hmm.
tone, and that's a
Yeah,
hard thing to
yeah.
kind of show somebody. So where did you kind of start honing that sound of yours that you have?
So I think I I think I immediately became obsessed when I first started playing. I hadn't thought about this until like this is a retrospective thought, but I think I immediately sort of became obsessed with like filling whatever space I'm in. Um, so I didn't really love to like follow people's tablature or whatever, because it
Oh
was
yeah.
like
Hmm.
it's like, well, I can't really fill that space because I'm sitting in my bedroom alone. And so I think what I like to do was kind of make it feel more like I was filling the volume more, and that means different things in different contexts. But I think that's where I started to sort of hone my particular tone. And then I think I was carrying when I was doing the co-songwriting with my friend before I started writing for myself. Like I was doing a lot of. I usually don't just strum a lot. Like I feel like that's more of a percussive thing, and for me, I
For sure.
like to string the melody through the whole thing. So a lot of, and I think that I started that practice when I was doing the co-writing, and I think that that sort of allowed me to like I play lead and I play rhythm sort of um, together, and I think that that has a lot to do with melody, because I want to be able to
Hmm.
control the melody and what people are hearing at least at a baseline, um, and I think that has helped me shape what I do the most is that melodic content
For
in
sure.
there.
That's one of the hardest things when you have students too, and this is from a personal perspective, but trying to incorporate those melody lines into chord progressions. And they like you probably know better than me, like some of these melody lines I'm sure you come up with, you can't use these traditional
Right.
chord voicings, so you really have to kind of think outside the
Yeah.
box here and be like, where can I hit these notes to make this work but also be playing
Right.
the bass rhythm
Yeah.
behind
Because
it.
you don't want
You
to
know what I mean?
drop the emotion
It's
or the
no.
momentum or either, which makes it tough.
Hmm. Now, I, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sorry, forgive my ignorance. Whenever you're playing with Hello June, it's been you on guitar. Is there another guitar player playing with you most of
Yeah.
the time, or
So
okay? That's what I
I
thought.
I play it. We played it as a three piece for many years. Like I actually just pulled
Hmm.
on another guy. Um, Starting
Okay.
last year, we had one guy, and now we have a new guy. His name's Blake Burkholder. Um, so that's been really great because although like I learned a lot from playing as a three piece. Like that was it just wasn't the sound that I had in my head. I
Sure.
like the lush textures. I like the sparkle. There's only so much you can do with one guitar player, and just tonally. So
Very
that
true.
was at, at one point I like realized that I'm like, oh, this is sort of great because like financially it's better to sort of keep it slim, and there's a lot of perks to the three piece thing. um, but man, it wasn't extremely satisfying to me. So it's been really nice to have like
I
the guy next to me that's able to keep things rolling, keep the textures rolling, get in there melodically and do some playing around with what everybody's doing. Like it feels a lot. I think that's where, especially for this project, it feels good.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to have a little bit of a safety net,
Yeah.
especially live. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what could go down, what could go out, what could something. It's that perfect Murphy's Law situation playing live, where something, if it
Oh,
can go wrong,
yeah.
it
Man,
probably will.
I've got a pretty
And
funny story if you okay.
well, let's hear it. That's what I was just about to go that way,
uh,
man.
there was one time in particular where playing as a three piece was like pretty bad because my guitar string, I think it was my G string, it got wrapped around. another string, and so I thought I
Hmm.
broke a string, and we were just getting to a
Yeah.
point where I needed to like play a solo, and again, it's just drums, bass, and my guitar, and so I was like, oh God, I broke a string, bad time to break a string. I looked at my other guitar and I knew it was tuned in a different tuning. So I was like, okay, that's not gonna
Mm.
work either. So I immediately realized,
Right.
though, I like looked down and I'm like, wait a second, like I didn't break a string. I actually, that string's just like wrapped around another string. So in the middle of this moment, I'm sure this was a span of, 15 seconds of thought. Um, I start trying to unwrap what happened, and I pulled it out, and then something else happened, and I was like, oh man, I ended up just being like I let the audience know that that this was just a thing. Like it's the only time it's ever happened, but it was a really it was a cute moment. It was a moment shared. I actually just ended
Yeah.
up putting the guitar on its a rack and waving to everybody and just letting it be what it was. It was the last song of the night too, which was obviously great.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, in that situation, though, I mean, that's really
Yeah,
probably the
I
best thing,
tried.
I mean, you
Yeah.
just own the situation, you do your best, and it's
Mm.
like, well,
Yep.
I guess this is where we're
Yeah.
at. So sorry about that. That has to be really intimidating because most of the time, whenever I played with bands, we always usually 90% of the time we'll stick to like one tuning. So if like situations like that happen, I don't need to have like a plethora of guitars. I just have another
Right.
backup or maybe two,
Yeah.
you know. And it's too easy in that situation. But yeah, I couldn't even imagine the anxiety just
it's,
running through your
it's not
body
easy.
trying to.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
man.
Because I'm sure people were like, "What's going
Well,
on?" Like, you know. Uh,
uh huh.
yeah.
Yeah. The good thing is though, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that playing live is the great equalizer,
Yeah.
so to speak. It shows you what you're made of
Yep.
and what you guys can do. That's what it is. And how we can
Yep.
problem solve under
That is
pressure,
very true.
extreme pressure, with everybody just
Yep.
staring
Oh
at
yeah.
you. You know what I mean? So, um, well, and that's whenever you guys are out on the road. Like, what are your guys? I'm sure it's changed dramatically since you've started. But what does that look like for you guys these days, or maybe what it looked like in the early days and what does it
Ooh,
look like now?
we have
You know?
gone through so many different phases. My
Yeah, yeah.
partner plays drums for me, and so
Okay.
there was even a time where we tried to pull it off as a two piece. That was tough.
Yeah.
We both were like, well, we don't love that. That was he was
Yeah.
playing
Right.
bass notes off of his like SPD. It's like this sampler thing where yeah,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. Mm-hmm.
we just that was obviously like lackluster, and we didn't want to just have like tracks behind us, so that that was it just felt pretty. We did that for a very short time. And
Right.
then we went at it with a three piece configuration for some years, and that was a lot better. Again, like I wasn't it wasn't my favorite, but I feel like I learned so much from it that I can't really complain that much. And now when
Sure.
we play, we've got drums and bass and myself on guitar, and then another guy on guitar as well. And it's to me, this is the best for the first time I ever. But we've been playing for 10 years. We've been writing songs for 10 years and trying to put a band together for 10 years. And um, this is the best in my head that like it's gotten because you have a sound in your head that you're searching for, and I think that this is the closest that those two things have come together, my head and reality. So that feels pretty good. It's just like we're in West Virginia, and it's a bit harder, I think, to like find your good fits, like there's less people, because I've been
Sure.
to cities and I've thought, oh, I could definitely put a band together here. Like, I lived in Philly and for a while, and I was like kind of stoked that like the population size was what it was, and because it's tough. Like
Absolutely.
our West Virginia people are kind of drawn to like either the heavy rock stuff, um, which
Yeah.
doesn't really fit with what we're doing, and then also like the heavy sort of country stuff is pretty popular too.
Yeah.
So, but all in all, it's been a journey. I think I've learned from it all. So like it's been frustrating, um, to just sort of, because everybody kind of thinks that they fit, and like it's when you're doing something for even 5 years and you have someone come in and they're like, "Oh no, I know exactly what you need," and I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to hear that." It's like, it's like usually not true. So, but I'm like so super stoked on our lineup
Yeah.
right now. Like, it's the first time that I've ever been this stoked. Like, it's, it that sounds ridiculous because I know bands that have started and remained, all for one for all band, kind of thing. And we just haven't had that history,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. Like I wanted that, but um, I feel like our live set. I feel at home in the live set now for the first time, which I think probably makes it. I probably look more comfortable than I did in the past.
I was gonna say it probably
It
is a big
is,
sigh of relief
yeah,
now to go on stage. Well, maybe not even. It might not even be like the kind of like it might be still in that subconscious part where you're so
yeah.
happy with where you're at right now as far as the lineup. It makes everything else easier because
It
you have
does.
people you enjoy playing with. Like that's the thing I've told people to. I kind of want to backtrack just a little bit about the finding the band and finding the members and stuff like that. For me, it's never been about. Well, let me put a little caveat on this. You have to be technically good, whatever that means. And I don't mean you have to be a virtuoso. I don't mean you have to be crazy. But you have to know the instrument. We have to be able to have a
Yes.
conversation musically. At some level. I don't need to sit here and break down music theory to you. But if I tell you to play like a G to a C to a
Right.
D, I need you to be able to do that. That sort of thing. But then after that's been established, I want to hang out with you. I want it to be fun to hang out. I want us to not only when we're in a practice space jamming, but also walking down the street, going getting food. Like I want it to be a fun experience because that's what's going to make the music even better.
Yeah.
The hang is about everything for me. If you guys are cool to hang out with, the music is going to come out of that because we're going to be in a great environment and we're
Right.
just going to kind of gel together
Because you're
and it's going
comfortable.
to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. That.
Exactly. And I think that's probably why you're so comfortable right now,
Yeah.
if I don't mean to
Oh,
assume
it's
too
a
much,
it's a
but
huge deal. I actually thought about quitting the whole, like just throwing the project out because I mean, you can imagine
yeah.
after 10 years, like, and again, I've played with some really good people who have their own projects, like our friends Annie and Dave. Kirkpatrick, she has her own project. She's like an Americana artist. She's a beautiful singer. She
Okay.
sang backup with me. I love that.
Very
We're
cool.
really great friends. But it's like I, she has her own thing, and I can't steal all of her dates in the summer, So there've been a few instances
Nope.
similar to that. That's just part of being in a small pool of musicians in West Virginia, and I've tried getting people out of state as well, and you have very limited practices that way, and then you're not comfortable that way either. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's being
No.
comfortable was so important to me because I felt like, one, I had to simplify everything that we did. So every time we walk on stage,
Yeah.
I know that been a band I've been a band for 10 years, and everything that we're doing is much simpler than I would prefer that it is. But, you know, when you have people who only play the songs a series of, however many times they can get it in the week of, like, you have to keep it fairly simple. And um, I think I just got kind of tired of that, like I just want to be able to further this thing and make it what I want it to be. And we found Blake, our guitar player, and I think that really changed my headspace on it because I was like, oh, like he gets it, and that's helped me out like a good bit in terms of hopefulness because after 10 years of trying um, to get good fits, it's a little disheartening, um, because I look, I would watch video and I'm like, I'm not comfortable. I look ridiculous, you know, and like some you could be nice and say, oh no, you look comfortable. I know I wasn't comfortable, so how could I look comfortable? And that's not fair to the
Right.
project. Like I should just go out solo and say this is just my thing, as opposed to, everybody expects a band that's been playing together for 10 years, and that's a it's a it's hard to hold that and not feel some kind of weirdness about it, but I, I think I I'm glad that I've held on this long, because I think that we have both my partner Whit and I have learned a good bit from the experience that we had, but whew, I don't know.
No, it sucks. It really is
Yes,
mentally
yeah,
and physically draining on you. It really is, and that's one of the things that I once again I'm so sorry, but I think this is going to be my mission statement for the
yeah,
year is authentic and
it's a good
honest. You
mission
know what I mean?
statement.
When you're in a creative when you're in a creative field,
Yeah,
everybody sees the end result. We don't see
yes,
what it took to get to the end result. We don't see the struggle. We don't see the absolute devastation that happens to you when you're in your own head saying you're not good enough, you can't do this. No one else is saying that to you. It's just right
hmm
up here. You know what I mean? And like what you said though too, like when you start having that thought in your head and someone's like, "No,
right,
you're so great." That
yeah,
doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? It's like, well, no, I know I'm not because of X,
right,
Y, and like, and you start keep going through stuff in your head. But I think that's one of the important things once again to have that conversation with people like yourself in the creative field that it's everywhere and people that deal with it, that everybody deals with it a little bit differently. But one of the things, and I know somebody else has said this before, but Josh Scott from GHS was talking specifically about pedal companies, and he said if you want to be successful, just
yeah.
stick around.
I I I think that there's something to that, and I have thought that myself. Like I can't.
Yeah.
I don't want to give up until I've at least felt like I've I've given it everything. I've given it everything I can, and I couldn't
Yep.
say that we did that until this configuration is a real band. And unfortunately
Yeah.
been you know we've been working towards having a band for 10 years, and I try to be transparent about it, because I know that I can't be the only one, but I also know that, like, I don't hear a lot about people having the struggles that we've had, um, and so I try to be transparent about it because it's real, that's it's made us who we are, and I think it's set us back a good bit too, and but
Yeah.
emotionally
I
I
think you're right.
feel like I'm probably stronger for it. Like I feel like I know exactly who I am at any given point, which changes, I'm positive of that.
Hmm.
But I do feel like I have a good handle on that, and what I want, of things.
Well, and that's the unfortunate reality is that's where you turn yourself
Yeah.
into who you are in the future through those hard times, through that mental struggle, through that physical struggle, whatever that may be. Like it, I'm not trying to sit here and say that struggle is not a good thing, because I do think it is a good thing. It really shows you who you are. It tests where you're at. It confirms what you know,
Right.
or it denies what you know. But it's a good thing to have that. What's not good is to sit and dwell in the moment of the
Yeah.
current
Right.
situation you're running into. You know what I mean? Instead of like, well, like, oh man, I'm not really happy with X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, well, what's not making me happy? What can I do to try to make it better? What can I do to, like start to try to kind of materialize it in your mind.
Right.
You don't even have to have a conversation with anybody. Just start to think about it on your own of like, what am I really trying to achieve here? And am I doing
Right.
the right thing by
Right.
doing X, Y, and Z or not? You know? So I've gotten into this habit here lately of at least once or twice, maybe 3 times a month, I'll post a short on Instagram of me absolutely failing at guitar. Like
Wow. That's awesome.
just the outtake. You know what I mean? And me
Yeah.
just like
Right.
sitting there, just like, well, okay, you know, just to
Right.
show,
Yeah.
like, because that's all you ever see, especially in like guitar centric stuff.
Yeah.
Just absolute shredding monsters, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's awesome. If that's your thing, that's so awesome. But that individual that's up there playing wasn't always like that, and I guarantee you, still to this day, they flub and they mess up, and
Right.
like they're human beings. Everybody does
Yeah.
it, you know.
Right.
But it is so important to me, man. Like showing people that the process is more important than the end result, you know.
Yeah.
And
I think that's very important. Yeah.
yeah,
It is because there's people watching all the time going, "Oh, I couldn't do that,"
yep,
and it's like, "Well, no, you could. You're just, you're seeing the 30 seconds of a perfect um, take or whatever. Like yeah, I'm such an advocate for just like attempting something, and getting something out of it, because I think that anytime we attempt something new, we get some learned piece of knowledge or repertoire.
there's a benefit regardless. Even if you fail,
Yeah,
there's a benefit,
right, exactly.
you know. And I don't know. It's a culture that has been cultivated by the internet, obviously, of the perfection side of things. Even just normal people posting the sunshine pictures on the beach, like, oh, life is so great. And that's all you ever see
Right.
from them. It's like, well, I'm happy that moment for you is so awesome, but like, man, like let's be real. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
Right.
always
Yeah.
sunshine on the beach. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. That's why I have problems with social media. I
yeah,
think like I do my best with it, but like my brain doesn't really think in that way. Like I'm not
sure,
just going like, how can I manipulate my reality to look,
right,
interesting, or
right,
like most of the time I'm working and
yeah.
like that's not interesting, like I've been trying to get more creative about like, okay, if I'm working, how can I like uh change this into a way where somebody can look at it, because maybe they'll find it interesting or find something to learn from it, because that's the way that the world has gone with the social stuff. And so I've been trying to get better at that. Hopefully I get better through time, because my God, it is like it's challenging for people like me at least. Like, whew.
Well, and that's a definite personal thank you for like that's how I reach guests on the podcast is I DM people. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I definitely understand exactly how it feels because sometimes when I DM people, I will get left on red or not message back which is totally fine. Like I'm not sitting here trying to expect a response back. You know what I mean? But I
yeah,
totally get it when you, or if I post something that I'm really proud of, online, and it's like, oh, nobody saw it. Nobody's going to pay attention to this.
right,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, but
Hmm.
once again, I think it's that steady momentum of if that's what you're doing, if that's how you're going to brand yourself, is utilizing social media. You're doing those daily posts. You're making sure you're being yourself, being honest, authentic, and stick around.
Right.
and you'll be good to
Yeah.
go. Well,
Just keep being
relatively.
consistent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That
Yeah.
the consistency is key, which is hard, but that is what the key thing is there.
I think that's true. And yeah, I've been I'm it's just I think it's tough for people who aren't like, I was like deathly afraid of like getting on stage at like a theater thing or whatever. Like that was like not my thing, as
Right.
growing up as a kid or whatever. Um I love solo sports. Like I was a tennis player. I played competitively. Um, I definitely just it's I don't know. It's not it's tough. It's more tough for some people I think than others. And I think like I your videos I like in particular like yeah, I like your style. And I've the stuff that when you're giving out guitar information in particular, I feel like it feels like you're sharing a piece of you, which is cool, and I think that authenticity comes through.
Well, I appreciate that.
Um, which I again the social media stuff is I think we're all trying to figure it out, and
Yeah.
it's being authentic. It's but if I'm authentic and I don't record it well or I don't whatever, it doesn't matter if I'm authentic. So I think there's a whole piece of that that's just really hard to deal with anyways. Like it's
I I feel like that happens though just in our own psyche
yeah,
that we feel that way about ourselves. It's not that perception isn't coming from other people. I don't know. Maybe it is. I just don't. I've kind of gotten to the point where I just don't care anymore if anybody
yeah,
when I say that it's not that I don't care. It's just I'm gonna put stuff out.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I'm just going to put stuff out. If I mess up, if I do a bad take, or if I do an awesome take, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
I'm gonna put the phone up. I'm gonna show something on guitar, or I'm gonna teach something, or I'm gonna put a clip of a podcast. Like I don't care anymore. Like I'm not gonna sit
right,
here and try to oh, what is this demographic? My audience demographic. What are they looking for, and how can I, cater my media? It's like, look, I'm gonna put out what I want. You
yeah.
know,
Your audience will find you.
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
yeah,
It's the same thing with anything else in the creative field, and that's why I really try to harp on that, just do what you want. Your
right,
audience will find you, but you do have to stick around and you do have to, play to the walls, especially if you're
right,
in, there is nothing
yeah,
worse than showing up to a venue, and I'm sure you can, tell me all about it too, isn't it? You just nobody's there. You're just
yeah.
like, well, hey guys, we're having a louder practice this time, you know.
Right, yeah.
So,
Uh,
but I think that'll just about do it for our main episode. Before we wrap this up, where can everybody find you at?
you can find Hello June at wearehellojune.com.
Okay,
That's the main hub for everything.
very cool. Well, I'll have that link down below, and if you guys want to check out all the awesome music or anything like tour dates and all that good stuff for you guys, that'll be linked down below. Hey, Sarah, I had a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it,
Absolutely.
Jake.
All right. Well, for Sarah, all of you, we will check you guys next week on next week's episode of Man the Helm podcast.